whenever the electron is at the positive ion site, the potential is conveniently taken as 0, and it is maximum between two positive ion sites. In this way, the potential changes from periodically from as it propagates through the crystal, and you have to write two Schrodinger time independent equations for a lower potential region and maximum potential region using Bloch's theorem, and taking the boundary conditions. Finally, if you solve those second order differential equations, you will be obtained, you will be getting P sin alpha A by alpha A plus cos alpha A is equal to cos K A. So the equation is very crucial because in that there are two variables alpha and k, and in the LHS only there is a cos term. So the only those values of alpha are permitted in the left hand side, so that it should not exceed +1 and -1. Once you plot a graph by taking P sin alpha A by alpha A plus cos alpha A along y-axis and alpha A along x-axis, you will be getting the energy spectrum of electron. What actually energy spectrum is? It represents the propagation of electron through the periodic lattice potential. And if you observe this graph, the energy spectrum of electron is consisting of number of allowed energy bands separated by forbidden bands, because initially the electron can be propagating from -1 to +1 value. This is the portion so that the electron can easily move. But after that, the value crosses +1, it is not permitted for the electron. So with its natural energy, it cannot move to the higher energy level. So there is a gap which is called as forbidden energy gap. Is this visible, PPT?
Yes,
Students?
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Similarly, next allowed energy, it goes to next energy level, it propagates between the limits +1 and -1. Again, when the value crosses -1, again it is not permitted for the electron to propagate. So in this way, the energy spectrum of electron consists of number of allowed bands separated by forbidden bands. And as the value of alpha increases, the width of allowed band increases, because alpha indirectly represents the energy of the conduction electron. As the energy increases, there is a certain probability that the electron can overcome this potential and it goes to the next energy state. So as the value of alpha increases, the width of allowed band decreases. As the value of P increases, where P is the scattering power of barrier potential, it stops the electron to move to the next higher energy level. So the electron will be confined to that energy state only. So it will not, it indicates that the width of forbidden band is more, or the width of allowed band decreases. As the P tends to infinity, then allowed band reduces to single energy. That means all conduction electrons, they confine to the atom only, they won't move, they are not free electrons. So it gives only a single energy level. So this straight away explains the classification of solids as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. What we have discussed in the last class, just I am repeating. And this gives the expression for the energy. E is equal to n square h square by 8mv square is the expression for the energy. If you put different values for n, you will be getting the discrete structure of the energy states. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. It will be like initially it is E1, secondary we will be getting 4E1, then 9E1 like that. Some missing bands are also possible here, which straight away explains the quantum nature of the particle. So continuous energy is not possible. Only certain discrete energy levels are possible for the electron to propagate. So basing on this Kronig-Penney model, the origin of energy band formation in solids can be explained. So if you see this one, the existence of energy bands in solids instead of single energy levels. So because of the nature of electron distribution in the crystal lattice, you may have a band of energies instead of single energy level. In an isolated atom, if you take a single atom, the electrons are tightly bonded and have discrete and short energy levels. If you take single atom, let us assume the sodium atom you can take, the electronic configuration will be 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s1. So it will give leads to only single energy level, because this sodium atom is not interacting with any sodium atom. So it corresponding to the sodium atom, it gives only one energy level. Suppose two sodium atoms are brought closer, then so when two identical atoms are brought closer, then the orbits of these atoms overlap. So three in the 3p there is one electron is there in the single sodium atom, one vacant electron is there, lone pair electron is there, and another lone pair electron will be available in the next sodium atom. Both will interact. So the single energy level is not possible here. It's a combination of the energies of both the individual sodium atoms. So when two identical atoms they brought closer, the orbits of these atoms overlap. So that means a motion of electron it generates certain wave function. So the resulting wave function is different than the individual wave function. So you will be getting some splitting depends on the extent of overlapping or the distance between the atoms. So how close the two atoms are there and what are their wave functions or energy levels, basing on that the band of formation will be forming within the given crystalline lattice. If you take single sodium atom, it leads to single energy state. But if you take two sodium atoms which is brought closer, then the atoms overlap. The energy levels are also will be penetrating with each other. They are overlapping with each other. The resultant energy is not as the single energy level. It explains the band formation in crystalline solids. If more and more atoms are brought closer, then more and more closely packed, closely spaced levels are formed. So it depends on the number of atoms, how many atoms are coming close. Basing on that, the intermediate energy states will be occurring in the given crystalline solid. If you take only single atom, single energy will be there. And in a solid of n atoms, if you assume in a crystal, there are n atoms. Each main energy level splits into a band of n closely spaced energy levels. So if you have one atom, only one energy level is there. If you have two atoms, it's a mixture of two energy levels. You will be getting two energy levels. If you have three atoms brought closer, it leads to three energy levels. In the same sense, if n atoms they brought close, they lead to n closely spaced energy levels. In this way, energy bands are formed in crystalline materials because of the interaction of atoms or ions with respect to each other. So the width of the energy band it depends on the extent of overlapping of the orbital. So what actually the atomic structure, how many outermost electrons, lone pair electrons are there in each atom and how they are interacting with the distance. These are very important to decide the energy band formation in crystalline solids. So as you go to the inner energy levels or orbits, the width of energy band is very less because the interaction is not that much possible because the electrons are very forcefully or closely attracted towards the nucleus. But as the radius of the atom increases, then the electrons little bit the nuclear force of attraction is not that much as you consider the inner electron. Like that, if two atoms interact with each other, then the energy splitting will be more. So as the radius of the atom increases, then that means at higher energy levels, the width of the band will be very high. If you take this diagram, if you see the electrons, they are 1s, 2s, 2p, 3s, one sodium atom. This is one sodium atom, and this is two sodium atoms that brought closer. Then what happens? 1s electron will interact, 2s electron will interact, 2p electron will interact, and 3s will interact, and 3p is not there. So if you take this one, so 1s electrons only you have a mixing of these two energy levels. This also only two energy levels. But in 2p, you have six energy levels because the six electrons are there. They interact with the six electrons of the second sodium atom. Because of that, six energy levels are formed. I mean to say, in the inner level, the width of the band is low. As you move away from the atom, the width of the L band is high. That means more number of Sagittarius electrons are available in the given band. This explains the formation of energy bands in crystalline solids. As I said, this is represent if one atom is there, then it leads to one energy level. If two atoms brought together, they interact with each other, leads to two energy levels. Similarly, three atoms interact, it leads to three energy levels, and four atoms, four energy levels. In the same sense, infinity, n number of atoms are there, it leads to n energy levels or infinity energy levels. In this way, basing on the number of atoms interacted in the given crystalline solid, the energy levels will be distributed, which leads to certain bands present in the given crystalline solid. Of course, they are separated by certain forbidden energy bands because an electron from 1s cannot move straight to 3s. It needs high energy so that only it can move from 1s energy level to 3s. So it's not possible in general. So the energy spectrum of this electron, it is in the form of bands which are called as allowed bands separated by forbidden bands. So this explains, the Kronig-Penney model explains the band formation in crystalline solids. Is it clear? Any doubt in this? It leads to the concept of valence band, conduction band, and forbidden energy band in crystalline solids. If you want, I give anyhow notes for this. Kronig-Penney model, in that basing on the nature of the graph, we can draw a conclusion that the energy spectrum of electron, because there is a restriction for the electron to propagate. Whenever the value crosses +1 and -1, it is not permitted for the electron to propagate. So only certain possible bands are allowed, regions are allowed for the electron to propagate. It can be termed as a band. So the energy spectrum of electron consisting of number of allowed bands separated by forbidden bands. So whenever you take a crystalline solid, if you take only single atom, it gives only single energy state. When two similar atoms are brought together, then they interact with each other leads to two energy levels. If three atoms come closer, three atoms will interact with each other and it leads to three energy levels. Like that, if any crystal consisting of n atoms, they brought closer, n energy corresponding to n energy levels are there. So as you move from the atom, as the radius increases, the inner bandwidth is small if you compare with the bandwidth in the outermost region, because more number of electrons will be interacting corresponding atoms leads to a wide band formation. So in this way, energy bands are formed in crystalline solids, which leads to the class, which can able to explain the classification of solids as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. So this is origin of energy band formation in crystalline solids according to Kronig-Penney model. Now you take the heading. This is very important question. Classification of solids based on energy band theory. Take the heading. Please you take classification of solids based on energy band theory. And also, you please draw this diagram. Insulators, semiconductors, and conductors. Is it visible, students? Somebody respond? Girls?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please take this diagram. Classification of solids based on energy band theory. And you take this diagram. I'll explain this. I'll give 2 minutes, you copy this. Sixty-one is not here. 66. Number not coming. 73, 74, 75. Did you finish? Shall I wait, students?
Wait.
Okay, please wait. You should be very active and you should take the notes also. Don't depend on, and we should refer some textbooks. Anyhow, we give material, PowerPoint presentation, etc. But you should stand on your own legs because self-learning engineering is. We assume we trust you so that all are listening and all are attentive. I don't want to be a watchdog whether you are listening or not. I assume all
Sir,
your
textbook chapter name is Free Electron Theory of Metals, no, sir?
yeah, electron development. Band theory of solids. It is. Only in the textbook it is given, it's a continuation actually, as per the syllabus, it is given as band theory of solids. But in that first topic, we are studying the free electron theory. What are the merits and demerits, assumptions of free electron theory? Then we come to this band theory of solids. Okay, while hoping you listen, as I said, the Kronig-Penney model, it explained the band formation in crystalline solids. The main drawback of quantum free electron theory was it failed to explain the classification of solids as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. Even though insulators, they have plenty of electrons in different orbitals, they are not good conductors of electric current. Glass material, they have plenty of electrons, ions, but they are not conducting materials. So this is not explained according to quantum free electron theory. Band theory successfully explained the classification of solids as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. We know that the atoms of a solid they are arranged in a repeated geometric pattern, and the electrons will rotate around the nuclei obeying Pauli's exclusion principle. So no two electrons in any atom should have the four quantum number values same. They should follow all these integer rules. Like that, the electrons and also they follow Hund's rule, 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, like that. In this manner only, the electrons can be arranged in a given atom. So from band theory, only certain permitted energy levels are there for the electrons to be in the energy states. So also the electrons in the inner shells, they are strongly bonded with the nucleus, and the electrons, as the size of the atom increases, as the atomic radius increases, then the electrons which are there in the outermost orbit, they are not strongly bonded. As the radius of the atom increases, the nuclear force of attraction decreases. So what happens is even the small thermal energy supplied to this electron due to thermal effect, these valence electrons, because one atom, let us assume there is one electron, like that there are millions of atoms are there, millions of electrons, valence electrons are there. So they constitute a band which is called as valence band. So it's only a concept, it's don't assume in a space electrons will be there like that. It's an imagination, all these electrons they are loosely bonded with the nucleus. So they constitute a band which is called as valence band. So the band formed by a series of energy levels consisting of all valence electrons is called as valence band. And in some materials, because of the structure and due to thermal effect, these electrons in the valence band, the electrons they are not completely detaching with the nucleus, but in some materials, the electrons they move freely in the boundaries of the crystal. Even quantum free electron theory explained that due to thermal energy, the electrons move freely. They won't cross the boundary like molecules of a gas. They won't cross the boundary, but they move freely in the boundaries of the crystal. So the motion of electron it refers to the conductivity. So these electrons contribute for the conductivity, and this band, the band formed by a series of energy levels consisting of all conduction electrons, is called as conduction band. So in this way, valence band and the conduction band, they are separated by a certain gap, which is called as band gap. The same is also called as forbidden energy gap. So basing on the forbidden energy gap values, the crystalline solids are classified as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. Once again, I'll explain this. In a given atom, the number of electrons are arranged using integer roots. So as the size of the atom increases, the nuclear force of attraction decreases. The inner electrons are strongly bonded with the nucleus. The outermost electrons, they are loosely bonded with the nucleus. Like that, there are many valence electrons are there. They constitute a band which is called as valence band. The band formed by series of energy levels consisting of all valence electrons is called as valence band. But somehow, in some materials, due to thermal energy, these electrons, valence electrons, can be liberated from the atom and they move in the boundaries of the crystal, and they called as the conduction electrons. The band formed by the series of energy levels consisting of all conduction electrons is called as conduction band. The separation between this valence band and conduction band, this is called as forbidden energy gap. And remember, even in the theory also we have studied this. This band gap is not the distance, so that the electron can move this distance. It is the potential, so that the electron cannot overcome this potential to be in the conduction band. That's why the units are given as electron volts. So the separation between this valence band and conduction band, this is called as forbidden energy gap. Now, the main problem is why some we are naming some as insulators and some semiconductors and insulators. It is explained on the basis of the band gap values. In insulators, the forbidden energy gap is very wide. So due to this, the electrons cannot move from or jump from valence band to conduction band, because all electrons are confined to the atom only. Very high energy is required for these electrons to overcome the band gap potential, and they move from valence band to conduction band. That's why practically it can be treated as the band gap is very high or energy gap is very high. No electron will be moving from valence band to conduction band. Even though high potential is given, high voltage is applied to insulating material, no electron will be jumping from valence band to conduction band. However, if the temperature is very high, when high temperature is produced for this material, high thermal energy is given, there is a small possibility that some of the electrons they move from valence band to conduction band. This explains why some crystalline solids, they are insulators at very low temperature, may be conductors at very high temperature. But applied potential cannot serve this purpose. The electrons cannot move from valence band to conduction band. These are called as insulating materials. Diamond is a typical example. And if you take the third one, conductors, in conductors there is no forbidden band. There is no concept of forbidden band in case of conductors. The valence band and conduction band, they overlap each other. How many number of electrons are there in the valence band? The same is present in the conduction band. Due to overlapping of valence band and conduction band, a slight potential difference across the conductor causes free electron to constitute electric current. So these are the conductor, freely they move, they contribute for the conductor, and practically the energy gap can be taken as zero. So due to the absence of the forbidden band, there is no structure to establish holes and total current is due to electrons only. That's why in conductors there is no concept of electrons and holes. Only in semiconductor it is there. But in conducting materials, there is no valence band and conduction band. Both are mixed. So all electrons are conduction electrons only, which contribute for the current in current conduction. These are called as conducting materials. Copper, all these are examples of conducting materials. So the third one is the semiconducting materials. So semiconducting materials are the materials for which the energy gap lies between conductors and insulators. The energy gap is more than conductors, but the energy gap is less than insulators. So these materials, these are called as semiconducting materials. And you can assume at 0 Kelvin, all electrons they are in the valence band 0 Kelvin, and they can be treated as insulators only. But attaining 0 Kelvin is practically not possible. So when the temperature rises, so at higher temperatures, definitely there is a probability that some of the electrons they move from valence band to conduction band, because if you give certain thermal energy, the electrons gain kinetic energy, they jump from valence band to conduction band. In a similar way, when certain external potential or voltage is applied, the electrons acquire the velocity which is called as the drift velocity, and again they move from valence band to conduction band. So the energy gap decreases. So at 0 Kelvin they are perfect insulators, and above 0 Kelvin they are semiconducting materials or conducting materials. That's why these are called as semiconducting materials. Germanium, silicon, all these are examples of these semiconducting materials. In this way, band theory successfully explained the classification of solids as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. Further, the origin is chronically modern. Energy band formation can be explained by the graph P sin alpha A by alpha A plus cos alpha is equal to cos Ka, by plotting the graph, taking LH along y-axis, alpha along y-axis, you can obtain the energy spectrum. And by interpreting the energy propagation of electron, we can say that energy of electron is having some allowed bands separated by certain forbidden bands. So this leads to the classification of solids as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. For insulators, the gap is very high. No electron will be moving from valence band to conduction band. For semiconductors, gap is little bit less. For conductors, there is no gap. There is no concept of valence band and conduction band in case of conducting materials. Whereas for semiconducting materials, the energy gap is more than conductors and less than insulators. In this way, band theory of solids successfully explained the classification of solids as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. You take this diagram. Now, in the same band theory, you have actually this is another chapter, but we'll discuss in specific. We'll discuss the behavior of semiconducting materials and some mathematical equations related to the density of charge carriers. Now, you take the heading semiconductors. Is this clear? Classification of solids as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. Students, somebody respond. Yes. So, now you take the heading semiconductors. Is this visible? PPT?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just now we have discussed a semiconductor. It is a material in which the energy gap lies between conductors and insulators. The energy gap is more than conductors, less than insulators. The range is 0.2 to 2.5 electron volts. So semiconductor materials which are having their energy gaps between this range, 0.2 electron volts to 2.5 electron volts, can be treated as semiconducting materials. So the electrical conductivity lies between conductors and insulators. Germanium, silicon, these are examples of these semiconducting materials. As I said, it behaves as an insulator at 0 Kelvin and it acts as a conductor at very high temperature. If you want, you note down these points. In brief, you write down. Because semiconducting technology is a very, very important technology. All of our mobiles, light emitting diodes, solar cells, integrated chips, all these are based on this semiconducting material. The advantage here is by changing the temperature, you can tailor the properties. At 0 Kelvin, they are insulators. At high temperature, they are conductors. In which region you need insulating material, the same semiconductor can be used. And at high temperature, it acts as a conductor. Other than this, these materials are highly responsive to optical properties, dielectric properties like that. So the conductivity and other properties can also be exchanged. That's why the semiconducting technology is very, very vast technology, and all our mobiles and display devices, LCDs, LEDs, solar panels, all they are working on the principle of this semiconducting technology. We'll discuss what are the applications of this semiconducting. So the basic definition is it is a material for which the energy gap lies between conductors and insulators. The range is 0.2 to 2.5 electron volts, and the electrical conductivity lies between conductors and insulators. Germanium, silicon are typical examples. At 0 Kelvin, they are perfect insulators, and at higher temperatures, they are conducting materials. Shall I proceed? If you copy this, otherwise you take a screenshot. I'll give you notes anyhow after completing this chapter. Shall I proceed, students? Voice? Respond, somebody.
Yes.
So you know that again the semiconductors, they are classified into intrinsic semiconductors and extrinsic semiconductors. Write this one. Semiconductors are classified as intrinsic, which are called as the pure semiconductors. And the second type, all this you have studied in your intermediate. That's why I'm going a little bit fast. Extrinsic semiconductors, which are impure semiconductors. Semiconducting materials are classified as intrinsic semiconductors and extrinsic semiconductors, pure semiconductors and impure semiconductors. So a semiconducting material which is not having any kind of impurities and behaves as insulated at 0 Kelvin and behaves as a conductor at a high temperature is called as an intrinsic semiconductor. Only the semiconductor, it is an insulator at 0 Kelvin and a conductor at high temperature, but here it is not having any kind of impurities. Then it is called as an intrinsic semiconductor. Germanium, silicon, and very purified
There's some disturbance is there, sir, behind.
Some construction work is going on beside my cabin. So try to listen because they are drilling something. I have no option today because I am in the college. So today you bear with me. But the PPT is visible now. It's only fundamental aspect of semiconductors. So now is it okay? Voice.
Yes, sir.
Because they are doing some work, but today I can't do anything. So semiconductor which is not having any impurities is an intrinsic semiconductor. Purified form of germanium, silicon, cubic diamond, all these are examples of intrinsic semiconductors. So this is the silicon. If you take the valence shell, all they form covalent bonds at 0 Kelvin because there are no impurities. So what happens actually is 5 silicon atoms will be there. So 4 will be forming certain covalent bonds. That's the fifth one, valence shell, they may contribute for the conduction. It may, due to thermal effect, this can be liberated from the atom and move. Like that, there are a number of silicon atom electrons belong to different silicon atoms. They go to the higher energy level so that they contribute for some kind, but it is very minor. So the contribution for the current in intrinsic semiconductor, and whenever a electron moves from valence band to conduction band, the vacant position in the valence band can be treated as a hole. Concept of hole I will explain. So in this way, the intrinsic semiconductor, germanium, silicon, they contribute for the conductivity. And extrinsic semiconductors which are impure, which are having impurities, they are called as extrinsic semiconductors. Whenever a trivalent or a pentavalent impurities are added, then you can enhance the conductivity. So addition of impurities into pure element is called doping. So if you add a trivalent impurity or a pentavalent impurity, then it is called as doping, and added element is called as a dopant. Because of this dopant, the behavior, the conducting behavior of germanium silicon will be changing. So based on the impurities which we are doping, the extrinsic semiconductors are classified as N-type semiconductors and P-type semiconductors. Did you got the difference? Intrinsic semiconductors, they are purified form of semiconductor. No impurity is present in that. Because of the structure only itself, some of the electrons they move from valence band to conduction band, contributing for the current. So these are called as intrinsic semiconductors, but the mobility is very small for this material, so contributing for low current values, intrinsic semiconductors. So that's why the better idea is you add some impurities so that the structure will be changing, more number of charge carriers will be generated or electron hole pair will be generating, contributing for the current. So this is the idea. So whenever some impurities are added, this phenomenon is called as doping, and the added element is called as dopant. And basing on the doping process, the extrinsic semiconductors are classified as N-type semiconductors and P-type semiconductors. Please note down this one, the extrinsic semiconductor. And they are classified as N-type semiconductors and P-type semiconductors. I think you have studied this in your intermediate, isn't it? Shall I proceed, students?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So N-type semiconductors. So when any pentavalent element such as phosphorus, arsenic, antimony is added to the intrinsic semiconductor, four electrons are involved in the covalent bonding with four neighboring pure semiconductor atoms. If you take the silicon atom, so there when in four of these phosphorus or arsenic will be forming four covalent bonds. So the fifth electron is weakly bound to the parent atom, and even for lesser thermal energy, it is released leaving the parent atom positively ionized. So the intrinsic semiconductors which are doped with the pentavalent impurities are called N-type semiconducting materials. So the energy level of this fifth electron is called as the donor level. All this you have studied. Then in case of an N-type semiconductor, intrinsic semiconductors are purified as we have discussed. Extrinsic semiconductors are impure semiconductors. So when in an impure semiconductor, the number of negative and positive charge carriers will not be equal. Whereas in intrinsic semiconductor, how many electrons are there? Because one silicon atom electron is moving from valence band to conduction band. One hole is created in the valence band and one electron is there in the conduction band. The number of holes and electrons will be same. But it is not in the case of an extrinsic semiconductor. The number of negative ions and negative and positive charge carriers will not be equal. So the relative concentration depends on the impurity added. As I said, when a trivalent atom or pentavalent atom is added, then accordingly the concentration of charge carriers will change. If a donor impurity is added, then the concentration of negative charges will be more, and it is called as an N-type semiconductor. As I said, if an acceptor impurity is added, then the concentration of positive charges or holes will be more, then it is called as a P-type semiconductor. So in an N-type semiconductor, electrons are the majority carriers. If in P-type semiconductor, the holes are the majority carriers. So the electrical properties of a semiconductor, pure semiconductor, can be changed by adding impurities. So which doping you are doing? If you are adding pentavalent, it creates an N-type semiconductor. If you add a trivalent impurity, it creates a P-type semiconductor. In N-type semiconductor, the electrons are the majority carriers. In P-type semiconductor, the holes are the majority carriers. So whenever it is added, pentavalent atom is added, four of these electrons will be forming covalent bands with the four silicon atoms. The fifth one is weak. So because of this, it is weakly bonded to the parent atom, and because of thermal energy, it is released and leaving the parent atom positively ionized. So a positive hole is created, and this electron will be moving to the higher energy state, which indirectly you can say it is a generation of a electron and hole pair. And generally it is assumed that for N-type semiconductors, the energy level, it is very close to the conduction band. So if you take silicon, you can observe the formation. Phosphorus is there. Four atoms of this silicon will be forming covalent bond with this phosphorus, and one more. Fifth one is vacant, and due to thermal energy, it will be leaving its ion, so that it is making the parent atom as a positively particle, and it goes to the higher energy level. So donor level. And when a trivalent element such as aluminum, gallium or indium, it is added to an intrinsic semiconductor, then what happens? All the three electrons are involved in covalent bonds, and because silicon is having four electrons, only three covalent bonds will be forming. So three neighboring silicon atoms and accepts one electron from the another neighboring silicon atom to complete the outermost configuration. It steals the electron from the neighboring silicon atom. Because of that, some holes are created. So whenever a trivalent impurity like boron, aluminum, it is added to pure germanium, germanium or silicon, then three electrons of this boron, if you take germanium example, three electrons of boron atom form covalent bonds with the three of the germanium. Now the remaining fourth atom of germanium, it steals the electron from the neighboring atom. The same case for silicon also with aluminum. So this process continues, and due to this, a hole is created in the adjacent atom because the electron is moving towards this next silicon atom. So a hole is created in the neighboring germanium atom. This process continues. Due to this, the holes move randomly due to thermal effects, causing certain hole current. So impurity atoms that contribute to holes in this manner are termed as acceptors because they accept electrons from germanium atoms. So since current carriers are positively charged particles, it is called as a p-type semiconductor. So whenever a pentavalent atom impurity is added, it creates an n-type semiconductor. If a trivalent impurity is added, it creates a p-type semiconductor. In n-type, electrons are the majority carriers. In p-type, holes are the majority carriers. So in p-type, as I said, the acceptor levels are very close to this valence band. This is an example for p-type semiconductors. Now, as I said, you take an intrinsic semiconductor. In an intrinsic semiconductor, at 0 Kelvin, it is a perfect insulator. But whenever the temperature rises, then there is a certain possibility that the electrons will be moving from valence band to conduction band and causing certain electrical current. So when a suitable energy, suitable form of energy is given to a semiconductor, then the electrons take transition from valence band to conduction band. So here in this chapter, initially we will be discussing the carrier concentration in intrinsic semiconductor, because extrinsic semiconductor the equations are different, because we are adding a trivalent impurity or pentavalent impurity. But here we are doing two big derivations: carrier concentration in intrinsic semiconductor, electron concentration and hole concentration. Two derivations are there based on the density of energy states and the Fermi energy function. So the basis for this is an intrinsic semiconductor at 0 Kelvin is a perfect insulator. But when suitable energy is given to a intrinsic semiconductor, the electrons will be moving from valence band to conduction band. So a free electron in conduction band is present, and simultaneously a hole, because the electron is vacating a position, creating a positive site in the valence band. This is called as a hole. So in this way, electrons and holes are generated. This phenomenon is known as electron hole pair generation. So in intrinsic semiconductor, as I said, the number of electrons will be equal to the number of holes in the valence band, whereas it is not the case in extrinsic semiconductor. So this is the introductory part to semiconducting materials. Based on the energy gap values, the materials are classified as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. And semiconducting materials, the energy electrical values lies between conductors and insulators. The energy gap is more than conductors and less than insulators. At 0 Kelvin, they are perfect insulators. Above 0 Kelvin, they may act as conducting materials. So they are classified as intrinsic semiconductors and extrinsic semiconductors. So purified form of semiconductors, they are called as intrinsic semiconductors. If a trivalent or pentavalent impurities are added, then it is called as an extrinsic semiconductor. So in intrinsic semiconductor, the number of electrons is equal to the number of holes. Only this transfer of electrons from valence band to conduction band takes place because of the thermal energy internally, and it contributes to very low current intrinsic semiconductor. So another idea is, if you give certain impurity to the material, the structure will be changing. The formation of different bands, covalent bonds will be changing, reorganizing themselves, creating certain charge carriers in the given material. If a pentavalent impurity is added, it creates an n-type semiconductor in which the electrons are the majority carriers. And if a trivalent impurity is added, then it creates a p-type semiconductor, holes are the majority carriers. Now we should calculate or derive an expression for the carrier concentration in an intrinsic semiconductor. This derivation is there, and probably next class I will do these two derivations. On Tuesday in the lab session, I'll take these two derivations. One is carrier concentration of electrons in intrinsic semiconductor and carrier concentration of holes in an intrinsic semiconductor. Up to this, is it okay? Today's session. This is theory. I have explained energy band formation in crystalline solids, features of chronic Penny model, and the classification of solids as conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. Then semiconductors, what are semiconductors and how they are classified as intrinsic and extrinsic semiconductors. Again, p-type materials and n-type materials. This we have discussed in today's session. Is it clear, students? Please respond.
Yes, sir.
Can you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So at this juncture, I'll stop. Just I'll take the attendance. And the next class, big derivation is there. All must listen attentively, because otherwise it is not that simple. Because some steps we should take directly. That I'll explain. Respond for the attendance, because we have to attend another class. Roll number